It's another big week. Are you ready? Are you ready for the best crowdfunding countdown in your damn lives? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Room and Board. My name's Chris George, and this is another episode of Crowdfunding Countdown, where I take a look at every single board game campaign leaving this week. That's right, if you're new to the channel, all we really care about is the time frame, and not the marketing budget, or even the content. We're here to take back Kickstarter for the little people, the downtrodden, those with no money and no brains. Like me. This intro is getting out of control. I read through all the rulebooks so you don't have to, and I try to highlight any interesting mechanics and give you a sense if it's worth your time and money. And sometimes, well, it's not gonna be. I'm just glad we're getting through it together. Alright, enough of that. Let's get right into the games this week. We have a ton to cover. It's almost like board games are getting more and more popular. What's up with that? I want less to do. And with last week ending with some space travel enthusiasts, what better way to start this week with another campaign desperate to get Elon Musk's affection and attention? And that's Space Puppies. But this one has puppies over people, so immediately more interesting. It'd be pretty hard to screw up something with puppies in it, right? Pause for dramatic effect. It described itself as a game of strategy and mischief, designed to bring a family together on a cozy night, or test the strength of a relationship over Christmas, which seems oddly specific. I really fear for the Christmas periods that the creator has gone through. How many times must this relationship be tested? Every Christmas. That's Space Puppies I was pulling out there. The purpose of the game is to get enough sets of puppies, all of whom look the same and all of whom have the same name. I guess they're Space Puppy clones, in order to forcibly take a planet under your control. Okay, fine. The planets have gone slightly off their axis and you need to assemble your team of Space Puppy clones to gently nose the planets back into their atmosphere. I thought I liked my explanation better, but the little cute puppies pushing those planets back? Okay, I gotta give it to them. First person to get 3 planets wins. On your turn, you'll play 2 cards, and these can either be to commit specific puppies in front of you to their team, or action cards for their various purposes, like stealing other people's stuff, whatever. You know these action cards. You may have heard of them. You can pay $27 to get it in 2022, or $37 to get it specifically by Christmas time. Specifically, the Christmas tier on Kickstarter, which says, what's better than playing fun cards that test your relationships over Christmas? Haven't we been tested enough? Talika. But if you're ready to put your relationship through its paces, well, you have until Wednesday at 12 a.m., aka tomorrow night, to decide. Now, next up we have a game called Everybody Else Thinks This Game is Awesome. But I like to call it by its handy abbreviation, EATGA! And this has blown up. It's raised over $250,000 Canadian, and it's by this couple, Zach and Kelly Weinersmith, who co-wrote a book called Soonish, and the art is the same as the cartoon Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, which is an internet cartoon that I didn't look up. But it's illustrated by Zach Weinersmith, if you're familiar, and he also does the art for this. I'm sure I'm familiar with it somewhere. It seems like art that you'd find on the internet is exactly how to describe it, which is pretty impressive because then they have certainly made a name for themselves outside Weinersmith. But Kelly Weinersmith is actually Dr. Weinersmith to you and me and everyone because she's an actual doctor. And I'm sure she's probably done most of the legwork on this trivia game, which I just realized now is the first time I'm telling you that it's a big old trivia game. This episode is already off the rails. But it's a good take on a trivia game because it doesn't matter who gets the right answer. There's going to be a number of cards drawn and everybody has to answer, but then whoever's turn it is, you then assign them to specific laboratories depending on if you think they're going to get the answer right or if you think they are completely dumb. Hashtag no money, no brains. So based on how well you predicted who was smart and who was Chris, you earn or lose citation points, and eventually somebody will climb their way up the academic ladder, win the game, and become the Professor Emeritus of Trivia. If you like stuff like Wits and Wagers or You Must Be the Idiot, actual name of a game, then you might like this one, because I really think this is the way to move forward with trivia games. Sorry, Trivial Pursuit, you're boring. Because this way it doesn't come down to do you know the answer or don't you, it comes down to a communal experience while enjoying learning new things. I think it's a good premise. I think their expansion packs look interesting. There's one about death, there's one about filth, the naughty section, but the way it's phrased makes me think that it's going to be a little bit more in-depth and significant rather than just, ooh, a risky expansion. I don't know if it's worth the 45 bucks Canadian plus 24 to ship it to me. I mean, I do know, I'm just trying to frame it rhetorically and not be judgmental. But if it interests you, the deadline for that is Thursday at 9:55 a.m. Now, next up, we have something in the board game adjoining category. Pretty sure that's what we call it. And it's raised a ton of money so far, over $300,000, which is absolutely incredible considering it's just a bunch of wooden poles and clips, and that is, of course, Laxrax. As we all know, the Calyx has been claimed by board gamers all around the globe as the optimal storage solution. It isn't the optimal storage solution. I say this as someone who has Calyxes, but I also love my Calyxes, so there's that. But like objectively, it doesn't fit the perfect amount of board games, Ticket to Ride size boxes before you hit that divider. Sorry, winter coats, I've got Gloomhaven to keep me warm now. But here's a product that, and I'm sure you've seen it, that claims to solve all of your Calyx storage problems. The problem being, if you store your games horizontally, there's always pressure on the bottom box and you gotta scrape it out and lift the whole stack out to get the one at the bottom, and all the boxes crash to the ground and smash into a million itty-bitty pieces. I mean, this is a real thing, and it is annoying, but it is not nearly as annoying as the campaign page suggests. Stacking boxes is just as bad. Either you waste time wiggling inch by inch, rubbing and burning away the lid as if it's been accused by witchcraft. It's actually a pretty funny campaign page. Or you lift the whole stack, leaving you sweaty before the game's even begun. If you're sweaty lifting 4 boxes, well, you have a much more serious problem that Laxrax will not be able to fix, and I suggest you head to the hospital because you're probably having a heart attack. But games night was so hard to organize. Yes, that's true. Fight through the pain, Jacob! Now, I've got a secret for you. Don't look over my shoulder to spoil it, but I'm about to rock your world. There's a secret, special way to use a Calyx to make sure you don't have to deal with having a heart attack or scraping the lids like accursed witchcraft. And it's what's called storing your games vertically. And I know, you're probably gasping in horror right now, and I was once like you. I stored my games horizontally, and I thought, I cannot store them vertically, the pieces will go everywhere. Until you realize that if you make everything flush with the top of the lid of the box, it just works so perfectly. Don't have to worry about anything. Easy access, like books on a shelf. Honestly, check out my Building the Perfect Insert on a Budget video to get an idea of this. And you can see that this is actually really effective. Even if you don't have an insert, pro tip, you know those punch boards that you punched all the pieces out? Don't throw them away. Stick them under the existing insert of the box because that'll push it closer to the top, which will make for less pieces spilling everywhere. And this is decidedly cheaper than spending 29 bucks US on a single Calyx. But if you're interested, that is Thursday at 9:56 a.m. And we're moving to the next one. Now, next up, we have something that isn't funding yet, and it might be the only one that hasn't funded on this list, I think. And it's really close, and I think it's worth taking a look at. That's a game called Arcane Arena. It describes itself as a tactical deck builder, where you play as a monk training in Kung Fu, getting ready for a mystical martial arts tournament. You're gonna have 3 rounds consisting of a training and a combat phase. You buy cards in the training phase, and then you use those cards to fight your opponents in the combat phase. And you try to be the last one standing, because then you get more points. I really like how each round gets longer. You get more and more actions as the rounds go on, rather than getting less and less, like a lot of these games. And your health increases as well, because you've been getting buff. I see it very much like Epic Spell Wars, but you actually get to deck build and create a deck rather than just drawing spells and hoping for the best. It's 30 bucks US, so it's not a bad price. It's not the steal of the century, but in terms of this particular list, it's one of the more reasonable options. So you'll have to decide if that's interesting for you as well. They're also the first campaign to have a rule book this week, so good on you, Arcane Arena. Take that, Lax Rax. Where is your rule book, huh? Anyway, the shipping's also really great. I hope they reach their goal because it looks fun, and that finishes its fun day this Thursday, 23rd at 2 p.m. Now, next up we have something that I can't decide if it's more or less pointless than Lax Rax. But hey, if you want either, who am I to tell you not to? But they do have a great name. Board Game Clips. Crystal Clear. Which you'll have to decide if that's better than the Calax Lax Rax. Calax Rax. Poblart Lax Rax. I think we got it. But if you have the inexplicable problem of your board game board coming apart, you can buy these transparent clips to keep it together. And honestly, it's not a bad thing. Some boards come apart really easily and it can be annoying. But I think it might be more annoying to take the time to assemble your cryptid board, which doesn't really get pushed all that easily. Or maybe I'm just not playing cryptid with enough aggression. I honestly was on board with this as a concept until they mentioned cryptid as one of the examples. They're probably just highlighting it because cryptid is well known and they can find an application for their product. But before that I thought, oh yeah, this seems like a thing that could be useful. And then when they give that as an example, I go, okay, completely unnecessary. You could also just buy a huge thing of binder clips. They're not transparent, but they're what I used when I broke my clips in Catacombs. Decent, but these do give you the benefit of being crystal clear. If you want it, that's 3 p.m. on Thursday. Now next up, this one probably isn't going to fun, which is too bad because it brings back incredible memories from when I was a kid. Now, this game in particular wasn't around when I was a kid, but there was something like it at my dentist's office. Anyway, it's called The Game of Hunt. And I know that's exactly what you want to hear, a board game that reminds you about going to the dentist. But when I was a kid, there was this big giant book that was in the waiting room of my mom's dentist office, and she would go in and get her teeth ripped out and replaced with nanotech, I assume. But I would be in the waiting area, and it was this big book that every page was a different board game. And they were all sort of roll and move, and there were these electronic dice in the top right corner, and you could move your pieces along, but it was just so fun. And so cool to be able to flip through these different worlds and pick one depending on how I was feeling at the time. And so this one takes the same concept. It's got all magnetic pieces and the board itself is magnetic, which was an immediate draw to me because I thought, oh, this is really cool. That's great for kids on long car rides. But then they also have all your movement actions are not dice, they're this deck with arrows. And I don't know how conducive that is really to travel. And so, not sure why the magnetic component exists, other than to maybe make it exciting for a kid. Because as a kid, I know if a thing was magnetic, yeah, it would probably be more exciting because magnets are magic. It's cooperative as well, so that means that you can play it with your kid, or they can play it alone while you have your cocktails after a long day of hunt. I'm assuming that's the counterpoint to the game of hunt. But unfortunately, it's been put up on Kickstarter, there's been one update, and there's been 0 comments. So nobody knows what's going on with it, and it's probably not gonna fund. Why am I telling you this if it's not gonna fund? Well, maybe it'll be relaunched, and then you could keep your eyes out for it. I think it's a neat idea, and so now you know about it. Anyway, if you wanna check it out and just look at it, I guess, that's Thursday at 4 p.m. Now next up we have The Spill, which describes itself as a cooperative reverse tower defense, where dice constantly spill out from an oil tower in the middle and try to murder all of the sea life in the world. Because they're oil, they're not murderous dice with Uzis. Now it's only a reverse tower defense because you are defending against a tower, but mechanically it's the same as any other sort of tower defense. Stuff is advancing, and you gotta stop it. You're tasked with taking over control of a number of specialists, try to save the ocean, save the cheerleader, and save the world. Now, unlike Pandemic, where the number of characters changes based upon the number of people playing, there's always going to be these 4 specialists in play, but they offer you 5, so at least there'll be some variation of how to mix up your team. I'm definitely interested in this one. It looks like a solid defending, definitely not a tower, If you like things like Pandemic or cooperative survive and eradicate things, it looks really neat. I also really like that they've donated $1,000 to Oceania, and they say that a part of the proceeds will also go towards these sorts of initiatives, and they've developed these lessons for school so that you can play this in a classroom and also learn about the environment and the dangers of oil spillage, and I just think that that is really neat. Anytime you can incorporate board games into the classroom, I think your kids are going to have a fantastic time and develop skills without knowing they're developing some skills. The thing is, I don't see myself backing this one, and this is kind of a theme this week, to be honest, because I think I can get this cheaper at retail, or for around the same price at retail, because it's $5 off MSRP, but it's also $10 shipping if you're in the US, and if you're somewhere else, it's more. So there just isn't a significant discount enough for me, and it's already been funded, so I don't have to worry about it not existing, that I feel I can hold off and maybe get somebody's copy when they're finished with it. It really does seem solid, though. It's an easy-to-read rule book, seems super simple to teach, and I also like that your team gets to kind of level up as you go through it, unlocking different stuff. So if you're interested, that finishes 6 p.m. Now next up we have Mythic Mischief. And the main reason I want to back Mythic Mischief is because on GameFound, for the first time ever, at least for me, I am offered as the selected in the corner, we think you could buy this pledge if you're interested. I am offered the base pledge, and not the big pledge, and not the all-in school spirit pledge. The $59, you get the game, and a little sweet bonus ghost expansion to boot. And I don't know who controls this, but it is just so refreshing. Every time I look at GameFound, they're always putting the all-in on me, and that puts me off. But here, I'm put on. I'm put on! Now the thing about Mythic Mischief is that its main bar for me is that it's going to have to beat Santorini, because I recently played Santorini. I know, where was I for the last however many years? And oh my gosh, it is so good. So for my personal choice, I have to choose, do I spend $37 on Santorini, or do I spend $74 on Mythic Mischief? And will it be double the experience of Santorini for me? But the game looks great. You're going to play as a different faction trying to gain control over the library from the other faction. And you're going to do that by physically throwing the students in front of the tome keeper who's roaming the halls, making sure people aren't misbehaving in his library. And you're going to shove them into him so that they get caught in detention, and you get mischief points, which I love. Any game that lets me get mischief points, I think, well, you've got my attention. And so you run around trying to score as many mischief points as you can. But everybody knows where the tome keeper is going. He's got 3 books that he's got to check out, make sure they're still there because they're banned, or he's got 3 that he's got to return. I'm not quite sure. So once he's done checking out those books, the game's over, or if you get to 10 points, then the game's over and you win. Hey, you won. Great job. There are also default setups for where you put the bookshelves and the clutter that's around the library, the obstacles, basically. Walls and obstacles. But as you get more advanced, there's a mode where you get to draft them, and you can create this interesting, unique board every time. And I also love that you're trying to scoop up little tomes that let you activate your special power, and you get an additional power after lunch because you were a hungry little high schooler and now you're ready to go. I mean, it looks great. It's got nothing but rave reviews. Somebody better call the king of average because these people have been bought out. And so with all this excitement around this game, it's hard not to consider it. And the base pledge of $59 is tempting for a platform that usually pushes a higher entry point. It's also going to feel really premium by all the stuff that they have upgraded. You get recessed boards, which are great. You get game trays, which I always love. I don't nearly have enough game trays in my life to constantly talk about how I love them. I just love storage, that's all. Give me good storage for your game and I could just kiss ya. Or you can jump up to the $95 pledge for 2 additional factions. Even though I'm a sucker for asymmetrical factions, that seems a little pricey for the increase. I'd probably just get the base and then get those later if you really wanted it. But it's a crisp campaign. And it shows that they've put a lot of work not only into the game, but into making it look really appealing. I love the merch idea. I love you can get yourself a nerdy varsity jacket with the Mythic Mischief symbol on it. It's $179, and maybe you want to figure out if this is your favorite game of all time before shelling out that much money for some swag, but I don't know. Like I said, it's got a double Santorini for me to consider it, but I think it's worth taking a look at. Although all you're going to see are really positive things, and to be honest, I think the design and from what I've seen in the rulebook, I can see it earning that. Anyway, its deadline is Friday the 24th at 8 p.m. if you want to check it out. But again, it's on GameFound, so get it in 4 months for Christmas. Oh, but only if you want to test your relationship. Now, next up we have Dungeons of Infinity, which looks to be a cure-all for all your dungeon needs. You can play solo, you can play cooperative, you can play competitive, you can play scenario-based, you can play a 30-scenario campaign. It's got everything. And all this for 69 bucks. That's actually pretty good. But at 89 bucks you can get the miniatures. Oh, but at 99 bucks you can get the gameplay all in with the standees, which seems good. But at 109 bucks you can get the gameplay all in with the miniatures too. That seems like a... But at $135 you can get the all in. Oh my goodness. These are the sorts of margins that just make you want to keep spending, aren't they? I mean, it's not that much more. Their stretch goals are really tempting, especially with the standees being upgraded to acrylic, which is really nice to see because oftentimes you'll find that the stretch goals lean more towards the deluxeified pledge level, and the base one is sometimes forgotten. And it's nice seeing that even though you're just getting standees and not the miniatures, they're still wanting to put that care into giving you a great product at their lowest level, which I really, really appreciate. And the base pledge at 69 bucks gives you all those scenarios, and in a way that feels more replayable, at least to me, due to the dungeons constantly having this procedurally generated setup, this random setup. Now, make sure you read their quick start guide to get a sense of how the game plays, or better yet, maybe watch a video on this one, because the quick start guide, I might be tired from a few long days, but it is not good. It's boring. And I know that's a weird thing to say about a rulebook. It's a rulebook. It shouldn't be exciting. Sometimes I hate all the little flavor text, but it's really dry and not that clear, especially if you don't have the game in front of you. And there are a lot of neat concepts here, like filling out a row of monsters every time, which kind of reminds me of that sort of JRPG-esque style. You walk into a room and a horde of monsters come and dum, 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 and you have to choose which one you hit and wait till they hit you back. Each room also has an associated environment with it. There's a little number, and then you check a card and you say, oh, this room is misty. And then you draw a card and it says, oh, this misty thing happens in this room. And there's a big stack of all of them. So each room will have a different thing each time, which is also great. It gives you that sense of progression, but surprise and discovery consistently. While I'm talking about it, the stuff seems cool now, but when you're reading about it, it seems very, very dry. And I don't think the game is dry. I think the game is cool, but I don't think the materials that are currently out for it represent that. I think if you like the dungeon crawl genre, or if you've just been interested in getting into it, this might be a really decent way to start out. I'm a little burnt out from the dungeon crawling genre. There's been a lot of them popping up recently. So I don't know if this is like a super viable option for me, but there've been great reviews on BGG. There's a lot interesting here, and they could easily have gone with a higher price point, and I don't think anybody would have batted an eye. The highlight here for me is for sure the randomized dungeon elements and the different events that will happen to you. But plus, I think it's always nice to jump into a second edition that has been significantly revamped from those beta playtesters of the first edition. If you were on the fence about Chronicles of Barbie Dolls of Dumbledore, this gives me a cheaper option with all my game tray desires. Now, I think they're different games, like pretty different, let's be clear, but I think that this is so streamlined components-wise, and in terms of feeling, it seems cool. Anyway, that's Saturday at 12:59 a.m., aka Friday night, if you're interested. Now, next up, we have the best theme of the week, and that is the game Bounty Hunters, where you're all these bounty hunters competing, not to bring in the most bounties or fame or whatever. You don't care about that. You care about getting $52 so you can buy Wild Ned the horse, who's just been put up to market. And I just love the idea. Why is it $52? Because that's how much Wild Ned is worth, and he's a good boy. The gameplay is pretty simple. You try to complete various bounties and bring various criminals to jail and get money for them. On the bounties, they say, no townsfolk. And when I first looked at it, I thought it said, or townsfolk. And I thought that would have been even funnier if you're just in this town throwing as many people into jail as you can. Whether or not they're guilty doesn't matter. The warden will pay you for it in this world where you're the only one who decides to go to jail, and then you can take your money, buy Wild Ned, and ride off into the sunset. Unfortunately, you can't put townsfolk into jail. You can only put criminals, but in my mind, they'll all be townsfolk. So on your turn, you either draw a card, send 3 criminals to jail. You always have 3 criminals or so in your lineup unless somebody steals them from you. When they steal them from you, they actually just pay you for it. They give you money and put them under your other criminals. Or you can turn in a bounty card saying, I have these exact people and I get this many dollars. Seems quick, easy. Did I mention Wild Ned? The joy is abundant. He's what brings me joy because he's a good boy and is worth every penny. It's $23 plus shipping if you get the early bird pledge, and which there are some still available, and that's Canadian too, so pretty standard for this sort of Kickstarter card game. You have until 4:58 on Saturday AM to decide, so get up early and get to bounty hunting. Now, next up we have Unsurmoutable, which is a solo card game that certainly won't be insurmountable for your wallet because it's only $10, or $3 for the print and play. It's super simple, can fit in your wallet if you have a George Costanza wallet like I do. Although I think I would never put a game in my wallet just based on what happened to that picture of poor old Aunt Judy. You should see her after being in the wallet. But it looks pretty neat. Basically, you need to make a pyramid with 4 rows. So 4, 3, 2, 1. And have an unbroken path to the top. Now you start out with 5 cards in the bottom row, and you either play the leftmost one and put it somewhere and connect it, or discard any card to use its ability, and then you refill the bottom row. But be careful, because you only have 17 cards to make this 10-card pyramid. Or 23, because you get a little expansion with it. Now, it being 23 cards makes me a little less excited for the $10 price point, but it's so small, I can't imagine shipping will be that expensive. If you're interested in solo games, and I'm not that much of a solo player, but this looks like one that I would legitimately consider owning and pulling out and playing just quickly, just because it's so quick, it's so small, you can just, and wanting to partake in this solo experience, well, that is a new, exciting feeling for me. And usually there's only one person who makes me feel new and exciting things on a daily basis.
Ooh, I'll make you feel something, bacon boy.
Well, that was not who I was expecting. Well, I may never get to the top of the mountain of my depression now, but at least I can pretend with Unsurmoutable, whose deadline is 10:30 AM Saturday. Now, move over the spill, because our next game, Earth Rising, lets us save the whole world, not just one measly poor little manatee. Just kidding, manatees are amazing. And guess what? They'll all be gone if we don't solve our climate crisis in the next 20 years. Honestly, 20 years seems generous to me. Guess I still got time to guzzle down some more motor oil. But on that bleak note, that takes us to the setting of this game, which serves to educate about the real sustainable practices that we can take to enact change and make sure that our world keeps on living. This sounds like a significantly better version of a game that we covered, I don't know how long ago, where you just talk about how effective a solution would be and then score points if you were right, pat yourself on the back, and go home and burn tires in your barrel filled with the last seedlings of a rainforest. And it's cooperative, and it also has specialists like the Spill who are also trying to save the world. And it also has modules for a classroom, which I love and think is great. But the best thing about this game is that it's 100% sustainable, and they're offsetting their carbon shipping. And all the ideas in the game are actually grounded in real science and things that exist, which I think is really interesting, and maybe you do too. Each person is in charge of a sector, and on your turn you'll have 4 actions. You'll try to get rid of the strain on various sectors of the world while flipping over new portions of the world. And if you manage to flip over all the portions and eliminate the strain, and you can employ people in those sectors and reduce the poverty and make our world a beautiful, rainbow, lovely place, in 20 turns, 20 years, you win. And more importantly, you've saved the world. Other than that, the game isn't that realistic because they actually think we have a chance. But I do love that they include an information booklet about all the sustainable practices listed in the game. It's really focused on this environmental education, and I think it is probably one of the better ones to attempt this because it seems like a pretty fun puzzle as well. It is $71 Canadian to get your own copy, or you can donate a copy to a school or a library for $44 Canadian, which, in keeping with the theme of this game, in the spirit of saving the planet and giving back to future generations, 8 people have chosen this pledge. Anyway, you have until 3 p.m. on Saturday to decide to save the world. Get this game. Now, next up, if you've ever wanted to be like Damien Powers from Love is Blind, then our next game, Toxic People, might be for you. Giannina and Francesca both deserved so much better. But you're gonna deal out cards like poker. But wait, they're not cards. They're funny cards! We did it! Well, and if you don't think they're funny, then you're probably just an uptight bitch. You're dealt out 5 cards, and they can be regular toxic people or action cards. And then you have an opportunity to exchange some, with the goal being to have the best poker hand of toxic people possible. But you can play your hand and reveal it, or you can play your action cards against other people and force them to lose a person or make their hand less exciting, etc., etc. I do like that there are 15 action cards, but only 10 of them are incorporated into every game, so you could pick and choose which ones you want to throw in this time, which feels good in theory, kind of like Coup Rebellion. And then I realized that, no, I don't want to choose. I just want you, the designer, to choose for me. But some people like to have this choice, and I think it is inevitably a good thing. So after the round is over, the winner will pass a toxic token to the loser of the round. And so the first player with 3 toxic tokens is crowned the ultimate loser. So basically it's 2 rounds, unless the loser wins the second game and passes it back to the winner or back to someone else, and then it's 3 rounds. You know, you get the picture. It's not gonna be that quick. It's not gonna be that slow. It's not gonna be that long. God. It's $24, and for that price, I would much rather Bounty Hunters. But if you're interested, that is next Monday at 12 a.m., aka next Sunday night. Now, next up, we have Lil Flower Shop, the dice game. And yes, in fact, I do mean Lil, and not little, and you heard it here first. Lil Flower Shop. This wasn't funding, but is recently funded, and good for you, Lil Flower. I gotta tell you, Lil Flower always has the tastiest of beats. Now, Little Flower Shop is a game about spending a calming, cutthroat death metal day arranging your various flower displays and knickknacks in the hopes of enticing people into your store and never letting them leave. And the only time they can leave is if they want to go out and throw eggs at the competitors' little flower shops because they deserve it. Their vases aren't as pretty as yours. So everybody's going to roll these dice, which represent your flowers, basically, and you can lock them into your basket, saying, yes, I want those into my basket, or you can re-roll, and you're going to go back and forth between your competitors, choosing to lock dice or re-roll them, but the first person to lock their dice then gets to choose from the various displays that are on auction, and you get to take that display and put it into your shop, and hopefully, if you have the dice that correspond with the display, you get to flip it over, and will score those points at the end of the game, and more importantly, have arranged a beautiful vase on your shelf. See, I can say vase or vase. I'm just deep like that. It's 26 bucks Canadian, and I think at that price, it is a fantastic value for what you get. Now, usually around this range, you're left with stuff like this. So this is a lovely, refreshing change of pace. For the price, it seems pretty solid. And if you're interested, you have until Monday at 11:50 a.m. to decide. Now, moving on, and yes, there are still plenty more, and plenty more interesting ones as well. We have Agemonia, the neglected stepbrother of Iridia. The miniature version of Agemonia will cost you around $13 more than Iridia, Or you can get the lovely standee version for $60 cheaper than that, which is still $163 Canadian. But it is lovely that they have a standee version, even though it's still ridiculously expensive. You're gonna have a 30 scenario campaign where you take a character on an adventure, lots of story, yada 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 yada. You know the deal by now. I do love that their character boards are dual layered, and it doesn't look like you can unlock specific skills until you reach or finish different chapters or different scenarios in the story. And I think that is both an interesting design concept narratively, because you're growing stronger, and these specific events, hopefully there will be these events that trigger your renewed power, like a Pokemon learning a new move. Those sorts of story arc beats. But I think it also is neat in terms of the scenarios that you can create, knowing that there will be simpler ones at the beginning and they will develop over time with more and more options as you play. Now, some of the main things that entice me and that make me excited are that each character has their own storybook, which they will get to explore along with the scenario campaign. And as you progress, you can choose your specialty for your character, and each one has two, which I think is really neat, as long as those choices matter significantly. But hopefully they do, because they claim that there are multiple endings, which I think is a really cool concept, to have this linear story, but depending on what you do, how evil or good you are, probably the ending will shift. I think that's great. Also, the scenario book is the map for each level, which is fantastic, and you don't have to worry about sorting through various map tiles just to put a similar grid down. But you have the map right there in the book. I think it's a fantastic way for games to continue moving forward, because it just makes setup easier, even if it feels a little less exciting in theory. And they also have a completely unique resource management system, which sounds great. I love uniqueness in the hobby until you realize that it's really just you have a bunch of stamina and use some of that stamina for actions, and then you have to rest to regain that stamina, which I feel like I've seen somewhere before. This is where I would flash all the boxes that do that, but it would cover up my entire face. You also move your action marker around like Scythe, which, hey, I like Scythe, so points to you. So they only have the tutorial rulebook up, but there are a bunch of videos mainly about playing the same tutorial to help you get a sense of how it's played with these sorts of narrative campaigns. Again, it's kind of like you're taking a leap into the story. But I will admit that I am significantly impressed by this, and I'm surprised that it is only sitting around $280,000 for something like this, which, with the care that it seems to have been invested behind it, I feel like it is good enough that I think it would be higher. It definitely looks as good as Chronicles of Drunagor, for example, and that raised so much more. But yeah, it is significantly more interesting than I prejudged it to be based on the font, maybe? I don't know. Definitely check it out if you like the genre. It still is an absolutely insanely expensive experience, so you better be sure it's going to be your favorite game of all time, or close to it, before you shell out this sort of cash. It just might be. Look at me inciting hype. It isn't. It definitely isn't. But if you're a millionaire, hey, could be a good one. It's better than I expected it to be. And that deadline is next Tuesday, the 28th at 10 a.m. Now, ending at 11 at next Tuesday, we have 11. Oh, you sneaky football manager. And that's what this is. It's Football Manager, the board game, which, if you haven't played it, is a video game about managing a soccer team. My good buddy Ryan, with whom I'm in a fantasy Premier League with, and he's currently destroying everybody. He loves soccer. He's the reason I made that Taskmaster joke whenever I did it. He's definitely getting this game. If you've ever played Football Manager, the video game, you are the target audience. If you just started watching Ted Lasso and want that to be your life, I mean, I hear it's great. I haven't started it. I can only assume this might be for you as well. But the thing about Football Manager is that it is Statistics City, and you're going to have to enjoy spreadsheets and statistics and all that stuff. And if you do, well, then this is absolutely for you. But the big thing is, in Football Manager, while you were able to kind of automate some of those decisions that you may have felt were boring or you didn't want to participate into, the computer could automate all that stuff. And here in a tactile board game experience, you're going to have to go through all these sorts of phases, and if one of those phases falls short, well then you might be bored for that portion of it. This was Ryan's concern. Now, having never played Football Manager, I don't know, but I felt it was worthwhile bringing it up. Ryan, if you're listening, sound off in the comments. How are you feeling about Football Manager so far? Or anybody who's played Football Manager and is also contemplating 11. You're my experts in this. Now, the premise of the game is you're going to be running a soccer club, planning and arranging your formation up until match day, and seeing if you win your matches or not. Your goal is to presumably be at the top of the league at the end of the game, but even if you're not, you get points based upon where you are in the league, and you also get points for your players, points for your management, points for how well you upgraded your stadium, and making all of your fans super happy to go and spend money and watch a fun game. I really find this hard to see how it's going to be a 1-to-4 player experience over being best at just a solo experience, but maybe that's the point. Maybe Football Manager, the video game, is for the solo experience, and this is for you to compete at Football Manager and see who's the best manager. And who knows, maybe it will be great enough to erase the dull sting that Jamie Vardy isn't someone you can recruit onto your team, and therefore your football team is just complete trash. Now, if you don't like soccer, I don't see this making you like soccer. I think it's filled with terminology that might be a little bit inaccessible to you if you've never flirted with the idea of a soccer game. But if you like soccer or are in a fantasy Premier League, A, let me know who your favorite team is and why is it Leicester City. And B, this might be a fun, unique game to add to your collection. Or if you like economic games, that's all this is. Building the best economy through a bunch of various sources. Now, I am pretty thrilled that I know my friend is going to pick this up, and I am really looking forward to playing it with him. So I don't have to contemplate getting this. It's $70 US, a little pricey. There is 10% off if you get in on a group pledge. So find those group pledges. Check Board Game Geek. Anyway, that is 11 a.m. next Tuesday, the 28th. Now, next up, we have EOS, Island of Angels. And this has got maybe one of the coolest boards I've ever seen. That's completely not true. It's just a map of water. But it's surrounded by this compass sort of symbols that I don't even think doubles as the victory point track, which it should. It's probably too small. But I think it's just a wonderful concept, and it appeals to me. And so I'm talking about it. Fine, we're moving on. Get it if you like compasses. No, it describes itself as an asymmetrical engine builder where you're captain to a crew of heroes. Set sail to awaken angels and fight demons and achieve glory. It's for 2 to 5 players. You have your choice of 5 different factions, all of whom feel different. Although in the tempo rulebook it says 6. Maybe that's a typo. Maybe we'll see a special unlock in the next week. I have no idea. I've had no communication with these people, but maybe. I love asymmetrical factions. Immediately I'm interested. I also love that you are to sit in a specific player order depending on those factions, because Rising Sun's got it, and Captain King Lang can do no wrong. I hope I don't change my tune when I unbox Ankh. But you're going to cruise around the seas, boosting the morale of your crew, rescuing these big old angels from the ocean, because if there's one thing we know about angels, it's that they are prone to drowning, and fighting and murdering off these big old ocean demons. I guess we drown them too. You get to add a token to this thing called the Chronicle whenever you do something good in the game, and the game ends when the whole Chronicle is filled out. You've saved the world, brought peace and light back to the Earth. Kind of sounds a bit like Earth Rising. Now it's 49 euros or 74 bucks, which kind of seems like the price point of the week, and is additionally too high for old cheapy boy over here. Because it wouldn't be that high in stores, right? It's not completely unreasonable. You get it in a store, but with shipping as it is, I would need one of these 5 factions to sail it to me at a lower cost. Be my angel, won't you? I think it really does look enjoyable. You do get some deluxeified components through the Kickstarter. The plastic standee angels become these big old feathery duck lips pointing up towards the sky. Or the evil villain, the Tickler's most sinister pair of tickling clamps. They also have an expansion which gives you more factions. Again, this seems a little bit high for me just to add 2 more factions because games are not normally $100 in the store. Games are $59 to $69. So you're gonna have to decide for yourself if that extra bump is worth it, and these extra little bits of wood and recessed boards, which are great, are worth it to you. The action selection is very much like Scythe. You're going to take a little worker, you're going to put it in a spot, and then you're going to take that worker and put it in a different spot on your next turn. While you level up your individual crew members, getting them to full morale so they can face these demons or rescue these angels without losing their mind because these things exist. Raise their morale enough so they're ready to go to hell and back for you, Barbossa. You'd best start believing in the island of angels, Miss Swan. And you have until 4 p.m. next Tuesday to decide. Or you can donate €10 for access to the Pledge Manager. If you're still on the fence. Who are you kidding? €10? I have never seen that price point as the donation. If you're in that tier, you're getting the game. Just stop lying to yourself. What a ridiculous level. And finally, we have the Artemis Oddysey, our last game of the week, which if you live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, or close to it, you can get free local pickup, which is incredible, because if you don't, then you're gonna pay an additional $21, or $27 if you live in Canada, on the $65 price point that exists for the Kickstarter pledge. And so I know I'm not getting this one because that's over $100 for me. And I don't know, it's gotta be something really special for me to spend that kind of money. But hey, it might be worth it to you because FOMO alert, you get a bunch of deluxeified pieces and game trays if you buy it now at the $65 price point. Why they even bothered including a $55 retail pledge is beyond me. It's probably only for marketing, realistically. Or it's an easy pre-order system, but who's gonna go for that? The exact same number of people who donated a copy of Earthrising to schools. Anyway, before I color your opinion too much, let's talk about the game. If you've ever heard of the game Ad Astra, well, it's that. It's a reskin of that under the Artemis umbrella because the Artemis project is more recent and was more well received, but not really, because Ad Astra is actually sitting at 1314 on BGG and Artemis Project is sitting at 1348. So pretty close. Maybe they're just targeting games on that page of Board Game Geek. But I really like the planning elements of this one, and it mixed in with something like Puerto Rico, where everybody's going to take a turn putting down cards face down in whatever order they want. There's a board that's from 1 to whatever. And then you'll reveal all the cards and enact those actions one at a time. Everybody gets to take the action, but whoever played the card gets to take a bonus action. So you might get 2 things, or you might get to pick which part of the card is activated. Whoever gets the 77 points is the big winner, or if all planets are discovered and nobody's there yet, whoever has the most points wins. So you're gonna go out and you're gonna be exploring these planets and building colonies and putting ships out there, but you don't get any points for any of these until someone plays a scoring card, and then you score points for however many of those things you have out. But whoever has the most gets an additional 3, and whoever has the least loses 2. So it's this back and forth of building your infrastructure while also activating these scoring points to try to get you to that 77 first. It seems really cool. It's too pricey, but it seems really cool. Definitely something I'd like to try, but probably not something I'm gonna buy. And that was catchy. But if you're interested, that is next Tuesday, the 28th at 10 p.m. And we made it. We're done. Thank you for sticking with me. That was a monster of a week. Now, every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you. And this week, I am really spoiled for choice. I couldn't decide before filming this. Usually I decide before filming. I say, okay, yeah, that's my pick and that's the pick for you. I thought, no, I need to talk about these and relive thinking about them because there are a lot of great options this week. There are a lot of pricey options, to be clear, but there are a lot of really solid picks. So I'm a bit at a loss. There's a lot of things that are pulling at my heartstrings, but for my pick for me, and this wasn't what I expected going in. In fact, I almost cut this one from the list because it was not doing well in funding and I had so many that I needed to look at and research and cover. But I'm glad I didn't, because I'm gonna go with Lil Flower Shop, the dice game, as my personal pick of the week. This is a pick that I'm most interested in, and I just think if you're looking for a filler game, this is a great price point for a fun little game. 26 bucks Canadian, you get a bunch of dice, you're rolling, there's some fighting over who gets the arrangements. I just think it seems really sweet. I love the theme. I think in that sort of filler category, rolling and checking dice is nice. Dice is nice. Yeah, there's just something about it that really appeals to me. And it's not only the price point, but that is a significant draw, especially in a week where you have all of these games that all really look good, but I know that I don't want to spend that much on them. So this was refreshing both in its design and in its price point. So that's why Lil Flower Shop, the dice game, is my current pick of the week. Now, my pick for you, I try to pick something that I think the most people might enjoy. And even just saying that makes me think that I should possibly change my pick and pick something easy like Mythic Mischief or something that is blowing up. But again, I kind of have to go with the value, or like my perceived value of it. And so my pick for you will be Dungeons of Infinity. And there were a lot of things that could have gone into this slot as the pick for you, but I'm giving it to Dungeons of Infinity because I think that it's proven it's got a great fan base through the first edition. It's only going to have gotten better in the second edition. It's a really decent price point for what it is, especially with the standee version. I like the idea of those randomly generated dungeons. So it has some precedence as people having enjoyed it, and I think that it is a pretty decent value for what you get. When you compare it to all the other titles in this genre, like Chronicles of Strunagor, Iridia, Agemonia, it's perhaps not as wide in its narrative scope, I don't think, but in essence, I feel like it's going to give you that sort of same feeling. And this one's 69 bucks US versus double that. So Dungeons of Infinity, you get the nod. But it was really close with a lot of them. I think there are going to be a lot out there that people might be excited to back. So let me know in the comments, are you interested? Is anything this week, has it caught your eye? I imagine for you big Kickstarter addicts out there like me, there were a few that I'm sure you had to decide between getting. And what inevitably made you take the leap, or made you say, I'll wait, I could get it at a later time, or potentially forget about it and play the games on my shelf. So let me know. Again, thank you so much for sticking with me. This has been a long episode, and I appreciate you all. You're all great. I really mean that. I'm really enjoying being able to spend this time with you, even though I'm running out of time before I have to edit and post it. So I'm going to get to that. I'll see you later. Once again, my name's Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, and I don't have anything funny to end on. Oh no. So I'll leave you with this. And it's probably gonna be Wild Ned. Okay, bye.